kind of like we call ourselves the Bumble of short-term rentals. You find your match, you move on, and then you come back around to us when you're ready to buy your next house or sort of rent your mom's house out. What we're trying to build in the next 6 to 8 months is tools that actually are part of that journey longer term.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are back from our long extended winter break. I like to take Januaries off to just reset a little bit, think about the future of the show, think about the episodes that we're going to put together for you all. So we did that. It was amazing. I was busy building another podcast called This Week in Hospitality. If you're not already subscribed to that show, you should be. It's a little bit different format from this show. We sit down with the same quad of four awesome gentlemen, one being yours truly. And then we've got Ben Wolf, Scott Eddy, and Edwin Kramer. Edwin was a longtime GM in luxury hospitality, working at brands like Edition and W Hotels, among other brands. Scott is one of the most famous influencers, if you will, in hospitality today. He's been all over the world. He travels full time. He works with hotel brands all across the spectrum, also some cool vacation villa brands as well. And then Ben Wolf, who's no stranger to this podcast or the industry. He's the unique stays guy. He's built everything from Onera to Owasi to his new project Baya. Anyways, it's a good listen. You should listen to it. We're going to drop those episodes, by the way, on this feed every Friday morning. So you can hop on over to This Week in Hospitality, or you can listen right here on this pod feed. I am super pumped for the next several weeks. We're bringing on a whole new cast of characters. We're going to have folks come on behind the stays who you've probably never heard of, and then other folks that you most certainly have heard of, and everyone in between. But today we are talking to Rohit Bezewada, who is the CEO of AirDNA. Now, I wanted to have Rohit on the show because I have been fascinated by AirDNA as a platform, as a product for years. Been very impressed by their product philosophy. Jamie, their chief economist, has been on the show several times. Scott, who's their chief marketing officer, and I are friends. And anyways, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how Rohit saw this moment in the industry. There's been a lot of talk on, hey, have Airbnbs, have short-term rentals lost their charm, lost their feel? Where are we in the cycle? There's loads of institutional capital coming into the space. What do we make of that, right? So I wanted to get Rohit's perspective on all of this because he is not from the industry. He spent years at Uber, helping build Uber during their hyper scaling era. He's an engineer by trade. He's had several other cool stints as executives in several different cool marketplace companies. So I wanted to get his read as both like an outsider, but also as an insider now, leading one of the most important companies in the, let's just call it unique stay, next-gen hospitality space, and get a sense of what he's thinking about, how he's wrestling with AI, what his thoughts are on the future of PMSs, and whether there will be consolidation or not. So we have a wide-ranging conversation on STR investing in the space, the amount of sheer dollars that have been poured into hospitality tech in recent years. And Rohit's just an incredible thinker and visionary and innovator. So you're going to love this episode. Stay tuned, folks. And if you haven't already, give this show a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us grow the show. Leave a comment, share it with a friend, and let us know what you want to hear about. You can just email me directly at zach@journey.com, and I'd love to understand who I should have on the show or what topics you want me to cover in this new year. All right, friends, without further ado, get ready to meet Rohit. Rohit, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Zach. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, man. We have been trying to find time for this conversation to happen for a while. Quite literally, I think it's been a year, Rohit, since Scott and your team introduced me to you. You came in relatively recently as AirDNA's new CEO. You guys are one of the most influential companies in the sector, one of the companies that I respect the most. And I know that many of those that are listening to this conversation are either customers of yours and or prospective customers of yours. I have so many questions for you, but I thought it would be fun, Rohit, to start with just a little bit about your high level perspective on where we are in the industry. You've got a background outside of short-term rentals. You were at Uber for a period of time, right? You know the marketplace business well. You've sat in a number of seats. You're an engineer by trade, right? So you've got this diverse perspective on lots of different things, quite frankly. I'm curious, coming into this space, especially at this pivotal moment where we've got Rafat Ali from Skift talking about how short-term rentals are doomed, right? Or how they, that their shine, their shimmer, maybe dimming, if you will. I love Rafat; he's incredible, but very provocative. I think like great piece that he recently wrote in Skift. You've got other folks saying that Airbnb's, going into the hotel space looks like a major pivot, perhaps TBD on exactly what all of that looks like. That's a very long way of just saying, Rohit, that this is a very dynamic time in this legacy industry. And so I want to get your perspective on how you see the industry today. What are you most excited about? What, if anything, do you think is worth being cautious of? Where's your head at these days?
Yeah. No, I love the question, Zach. And I think you're right. This is a very interesting time. Some background. Right when I started off at Uber was also when Airbnb was coming into the scene and becoming a big marketplace. So I have a lot of friends working at Airbnb who were at Uber. So it's fun to see that. Um, in terms of the Rafat Ali article, the pivot into hotels, here's my honest 2 cents coming in from the outside. Like if you think about the overall volume of bookings that happens in Airbnb, it's 532 million plus nights a year. At that scale, it still offers a pretty phenomenal experience as a marketplace to most of the demand/eyeballs that are pursuing an alternative stay.
Yep.
So, as a category, short-term rentals continues to take market share in terms of overall lodging nights. But if you are an investor in Airbnb, or if you're Airbnb, you're obviously trying to think about how else can I take the demand gen and the eyeballs I already have and take a bigger share of overall lodging nights outside of just alternative accommodations. And my take is like hotels and independent hotels and boutiques is a natural foray into that. So like so especially if you look at booking, 70% of the overall lodging nights is alternative accommodation. EMEA, APAC, same thing. So like I'm excited for sort of Airbnb to like continue to like grow in that space and continue to channel the eyeballs in that area.
One of the things I remember, at least at one point in time, I don't know if it was Jamie Lane, who's your chief economist. He's been on the pod. He's a good friend of the pod, and he's just he's a super fun hang. We have a wager going on actually right now for all of our listeners on whether Airbnb will launch any sort of like branded apart hotel sort of experience in the next 6 months. We're betting beers on it, guys. So hopefully I win. But
my hot take is a resounding no. Is my hot take if I was waging with that.
Looks like I'll be buying both you and Jamie beers then for the next conference circuit, which is our wager. But what I remember AirDNA being, right, a few years ago, even in its positioning and its marketing, right, is like kind of this secret set of tools for the individual investor, right? So I am interested in a second home in a vacation destination. Maybe it's a home I plan to frequent with my family. Maybe it's just another investment opportunity. And AirDNA offered this solution, right, for me to go in, do some market research, understand what comps were in that particular market, and then have a better informed decision of whether this is something that makes sense for me and my purposes or not. The industry has professionalized so much in just the last like 5 years, right? And what I specifically mean by that, because we talk about professionalization in myriad contexts, is that you see these very proficient operators, many of whom have built pretty meaningful and successful brands, right, around their operations, really becoming meaningful businesses. You couple this with just the it seems like every other month, maybe it's less dramatic than that, every other 6 months or so, there's some consumer story of a horrible Airbnb experience, right, that they had. Pretty much everyone in our networks can probably tell us about like a great experience that they had on Airbnb and a terrible experience that they had when booking an Airbnb. And as a result, right, you've seen professional operators really kind of rise to the top of the preferred stays, right? And not just, this isn't just anecdotal. You're seeing this in the evidence, right, of folks booking professional homes more and more and more. Now, obviously, it's still, far outweighed by the single kind of individual owner, which is kind of Airbnb's kind of core comp set, at least initially their core customer as well. But this is again a very long way of asking a relatively simple question, which is AirDNA still for the casual, if you will, everyday investor? Do you guys see an opportunity to professionalize your own tool set so that it is more usable, if you will, for a professional audience? I know that there's been like, depending on who you talk to, right? There's been like, yes, they're moving in this direction. No, they're not moving in this direction. So let's hear from you, the CEO, right? How are you guys thinking about the individual investor versus the vacation rental manager?
Zach, if you think about AirDNA's positioning, the way I try to position it internally to my employees is we sit at the top of the funnel of anyone's short-term rental journey. So we sit before a person is even remotely interested in short-term rentals as an asset class. I call it democratizing investing in short-term rentals. Like, we are educating the masses around the benefits of the big beautiful bill, the benefits to short-term rental, like how much cash flow could you potentially make? What are the best places to invest? So that is way upstream of ever supply getting into the markets. Even if you talk about the industry professionalizing, the rise of property managers, the rise of M&A within property managers, consolidation, like all the whole song and dance of the software vendor space, it starts with needing enough supply for all these folks to like go service. So like, we service upstream of that. So if you think about where AirDNA sits, we're top of the funnel. And the biggest advantage we have as a software company is we have the distribution advantage. Like, we don't pay for this. This organically comes to us. We get 10 million visitors a year. We get 4 million addresses searched on our platform. So if you think about that scale, in any given month, if there's 60,000 listings that come in the US, brand new listings, more than 60 to 70% of those have potentially been searched on a platform. So we see demand before Airbnb sees demand. So we are sitting way upstream of where like sort of demand distribution comes in. So the biggest advantage AirDNA has is distribution. Let me point a different way. How many property managers do you think sign up for AirDNA on a monthly basis to check it out for free? Just guess a wild number.
20%.
No, number, like quantum.
Number. Oh gosh. Let's say 1,000.
Yeah, it's 2,500 plus.
Wow.
If you go ask the CEO of Guesty, if you go ask the CEO of Hostaway, if you go ask the CEO of any software company in the space, they do not have that in their pipeline. They would kill for that in their distribution pipeline.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is like, yes, are we positioned to build tools for the professional property managers? Yes, because we have the distribution advantages. Now, how are we going to go about doing it? So one is building the right set of products. So if you think about the retail investor or the individual homeowner that you're talking about, the 5.5 million folks who have less than 5 homes, they typically use us right now for sort of acquisition intelligence. So like finding their home, understanding what's the right market, is it a good market? Once they find a particular address, then using a set of tools to like understand cash flow and forecast what they can make. What they are currently not using our tool for is, it's kind of like, we call ourselves the Bumble of short-term rentals. You find your match, you move on, and then you come back around to us when you're ready to buy your next house or sort of rent your mom's house out. What we're trying to build in the next 6 to 8 months is tools that actually are part of that journey longer term. So like agentic benchmarking tools, potential dynamic pricing and revenue management tools that sort of like work with you along the full journey, and support single channel usage. Like if you only have one home, and there's 3 million folks of those who have only a single home, and you're only on a single channel on Airbnb, if you want a pricing tool outside of Airbnb, we can be that solution. If you want to know how you're performing against your comp set, we want to give you insights that matter to you and adjust as you see fit. So like those are all stuff we're building. Now that's just for the retail investor. That's the 5.5 million TAM that everyone talks about. It is the most unvended space, and the biggest vendor is Airbnb. You spoke about the professional managers. There's 100,000 plus of those globally. There's two big problems there that we're trying to tackle, Zach. Like if you think about the workflow of a property manager and where AirDNA is positioned to win, the biggest area right now is winning owners. So why I say that? So the reason I spoke about democratizing short-term rental investing, the distribution, my mom, when she tried to get into short-term rentals, her expectations around revenue were not set on any other portal. They were set on AirDNA. She entered her address and she was like, oh, I could make $60,000 renting out my house. Now, when a property manager, let's say Zach and company, comes and pitches and saying like, hey, like I would love to manage your house. We've generated X amount of yield, X amount of return, like you should go with us. She's going to ask them, how much money do you think I can make? If now Zach and company was using AirDNA to manage that conversation, how likely do you think they're to close? Because the expectations are set on platform A, and if you're using platform A to also manage that, it's easier. So like we are trying to get into sort of owner, like I call it the owner management suite, which is like, hey, like find your owner. We have million plus addresses. We can tell you exactly who the person is. We can tell you what their phone number is, what their email is. Reach out to them. Use a easy to download packet that we generate to being like, hey, here's how much your home could make. Here's how much I make compared to my competitors. Here's why I am better, and here's why you should go with me. And C, here's how much we can forecast. We can sort of pro forma that for you and give you a very detailed packet that allows you to come work with us. So that is work stream number one, which is find the owner and retain and win the owner. The next thing is now you have this owner, you actually have to manage their home in terms of pricing, comparing them against comps, answering the 20 plus questions that a potential owner is sending to you. And if you talk to like 100 plus revenue managers, property managers, that's a big chunk of their work. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we use our market leading data to sort of come up with solutions that allow you on, like sort of like bring you along on the revenue management journey, answer the owner questions in a succinct way. And because we've already built that trust, every single hedge fund that trades an OTA stock buys the data. Every single OTA buys it. Like there's everyone who wants to be anybody in the space is buying our data. So if they can trust us, you can as well. So the idea is we have won the hearts and minds of the owners. So can we then use that currency to actually get property managers to use our solutions for whether it's revenue management, owner management? That's the second work stream. The third work stream, Zach, is actually around performance benchmarking and board management. So if you are a property manager, you're looking to acquire a business or you're looking to sell your business, you as a CEO of a property management business need to understand how you're performing against your market, your sub-market, your competitors. You need BI tools to sort of help you do that. And we have launched a BI tool 4 months ago, and we're already seeing 70% growth year over year. This is me, Zach, saying we're not doing any intentional marketing. We're just taking leads that are landing and just sending them along the way. So long way of saying we are 100% going to get into solving problems for property managers.
Yeah.
But we're starting with where we have the right to win. We're not trying to like just go out and build like a whimsical solution that doesn't really solve a problem. We're asking ourselves, okay, we have the best data in the industry. We have the best data science team in the industry and the best engineering team in the industry. We have the slickest product that competes with most high-end design products. So like, what can we build and what problems can we solve that give us the natural right to win and dominate in the industry? So that's sort of where we're going.
When you think about, and you kind of hinted at this, but you think that you'll ever have like a formal marketplace for VRM companies that are, a buy-sell marketplace, right? I know loads of folks, right, who it's this big black box. You go to like Verma, right, and you go to their like exec summit, which I was at, I think last January, right, and the big question that like literally everyone there, and these are executives, right, so there's certainly a bias there, right, is trying to figure out is how much is my company actually like worth, right? And it's so difficult for myriad reasons, right? There are a number of factors, and I think in this industry in particular, because it is a little bit more of a traditional legacy industry, there isn't great benchmarking. So you guys are working on some of that benchmarking, but in addition to that, like I think a lot of the time, like why isn't what would it be like to just have a marketplace where you could go in and not just buy a property, right, and or solicit services from a property manager, but actually buy their business like for them. Like, and again, you got to be careful, obviously, with the listings and whatnot. But there are loads of other marketplaces like that exist in other industries, and it'd be interesting to kind of to have you guys, right, given your kind of where you sit uniquely in the market, be that conduit. I'm sure this is something that you've already thought about and or maybe are even working on. Yeah. But I think that's a big need that the market has.
No, so we aren't going to be an M&A marketplace directly. We already have a module. We call it the property manager module, where you as a property manager, Zach, can go in and sort of pick a region, pick a geo, pick a sub-market. We tell you what are the property managers that are operating in that market, how many listings do they have, how much sort of revenue are they making, what's the ADR is. This is all based on model data, so it's not like we're giving away trade secrets. This is our estimation of what we believe to be the revenue, ADR, occupancy of that person. Now, the way, Zach, the smartest property managers are using AirDNA is they use it to underwrite. So before you go buy a business, before you go to any M&A, you're like trying to figure out, okay, here are my 6 competitors in this ecosystem. If I'm trying to buy doors, I want to try and understand what is the alpha on the deal. If you're paying top of the line for a business that's already juiced up with a lot of efficiency, it's kind of like not the best M&A deal. So like you're going to try and find assets that don't have the highest RevPAR, that don't have the best occupancy, that have crappy reviews, where you can take your magic sauce in terms of how you run a phenomenal business and apply that operationally to the business you buy. So we give you and surface all those metrics from a growth and M&A basis to where you can identify the exact targets that you go after. So when you are going for that first M&A meeting, whichever investment bank you hire or whichever organically way you source, you're very well prepped in terms of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what markets they operate in, what are their best doors, what are their worst doors, how you can organically like take away their market share by aka like calling on their doors and trying to ask them to work with you, or inorganically acquiring them. So we surface all that to those folks. What we are not doing is directly saying like, hey, this person's available for sale, go do that or buy that. That's a little above our pay grade as well as our expertise. We are more in the commercial intelligence space where we surface the insights in a digestible manner and we leave it to the eye of the beholder in terms of how they use it. But tactically speaking, every single aggregator, think of any aggregator that is playing in the short-term rentals, acquiring companies, is a customer. Every customer that's looking to pursue an M&A process is a customer. Every M&A advisory firm that is looking to advise a company is a customer. Every consulting company that is looking to advise an IC on if it's a good space or not is a customer. So we are very embedded in the entire M&A ecosystem, from consultants to revenue managers to investment bankers to property managers. They're all customers, but we're not going to play God when it comes to M&A.
Just cut out the middleman, Rohit. Come on, man. There's the opportunity. But no, there's a lot of work there, and it's probably a big distraction from your core, which is important to focus on. Speaking of this, Rohit, and you guys being this intelligence platform specifically for this industry, I like that positioning. One of the things I've talked to Jamie about before, and I think loads of folks in the industry have wanted, especially kind of where I sit in this space, where a lot of people I talk to are building really cool, unique product, right? Unique stays, these treehouse resorts, these like iconic short-term rentals that go viral on Instagram every week, right? So, a little bit of a different category of stay than the core 25 condos in Myrtle Beach customer, right? That AirDNA might also have. And one of the things, really one of the biggest opportunities, I think, is there is obviously this trend towards the unique, the novel, right? Building more differentiated experiences. I think the kind of customer outside of maybe the core property manager that is ripest, if you will, for AirDNA is that customer that wants to build a branded product, right? And maybe this product sort of flirts like with the lines between a short-term rental and a hotel, right? We see more and more of that product. Mm-hmm. Today, you see the hotels kind of coming in and making their own versions of these products. So there's, from a consumer perspective, like the demand and the interest is there. One of the things that's been super hard, right, for folks to figure out, right, is like, how do you know if you can pencil a treehouse resort in, the Texas Hill Country? Or how do you know if you can make a 25 key luxe cabin off-grid experience in New Hampshire like work, right? When there's very, very limited data. And if you just go off of comps, right, the ADRs you see are $100 a night. And you're like, well, that's because there's no product around here, right? That's similar to this, right? And it's pulling from these really broken down, like rundown old inns, right? Or basement rentals or something like that. So I feel like the opportunity, right? And this probably supersedes even just AirDNA, but the opportunity for the kind of intelligence that I think this next generation of hospitality entrepreneur is looking for, right? Is, okay, what are other signals that you could surface to me? Right? I understand that the hard asset comps aren't there, right? But what other signals could you signal to me on whether or not, right, this actually is the market to go and build a glass tree house in, right? How are you thinking about that? Are you guys even paying any attention to this? Is this kind of like all right, this is like the 1% of folks
no,
in
Zach,
the business? Like, how do you think about this?
It's like you spoke to my PM prior to this and you read my product roadmap or something like that. But the way we are trying to tackle this is twofold. Again, I keep coming back to what is a right to win and why we rightly positioned for this. So we scrape every single review across the OTAs. We have an understanding of why people visit a certain place. So we are basically trying to take all those insights and we are launching a new AI Rentalizer or AI Market Overview product. What I mean by that is this is not a sparkle line that just summarizes what you're seeing in a chart. We are real-time building agentic solutions, which basically, let's take your Hill Country example. We will real-time scrape the Hill Country regulatory information and tell you, like, can you actually build something there? What are the regulations? What are the minimum stays? What can you do? We look at Zillow and we can tell you, like, here's the cap. We look at the agent goes through all of the reviews and says, based on the 100,000 reviews in Hill Country, like, here are the 5 or 6 things that people are looking for. Here are the events. Here's what people are looking for. Here's where there is a gap. Here are the kind of amenities you need. Here's kind of what you need to build. It's not directly tied to a boutique hotel, but for the super sharp investors act that you're talking about, that is graduating from having 2 or 3 homes to like dreaming bigger in terms of like the treehouse with the waterfall in the back in Ohio, or somebody building something in Wisconsin. Like every behind the stays podcast to listen to, I'm like, man, this is like, it's like one of those, like, the recent podcast I heard, someone from Bali came and designed like a Balinese like style resort in the US. Like the dreamers and the hospitality dreamers, like we have an intelligent solution that will tell them, if you tell me which market that you're interested in, we will tell you exactly what the demand is wanted to see there, why they come there, what they want. And then you could use that information to try and pencil down, like, if I design it, like if I build a resort in the middle of nowhere, here's what I can expect in terms of demand and occupancy and ADR. And here's what the regulations can do. Here's what my comp set looks like. So if you are coming on the OTAs trying to search for something, you know exactly who you're up against. You know exactly what they're offering. You know exactly what these guests are looking for and why you would stand out and why you would have a better occupancy than any standalone home. So like our product is geared towards not just the individual investor, but also the sophisticated hospitality entrepreneur that is trying to find that edge in what is a highly overlapped zone between like classic hotels and short-term rentals, because these boutique, beautiful properties that you're talking about is trying to address that leisure market that is trying to look for something differentiated than like a classic home.
It seems to me too, you could also, and you guys are probably already doing this, but like take in social data, social intent, right? Consumer data around even just like a SEMrush tool. If you've used like for our listeners who might not be aware, it's SEO research tool. Now they're an AEO and SEO research tool because you got to be if you're an SEO research tool today. But point being, right, these other signals, right, that aren't even necessarily, because the thing is, once somebody knows it's a good place to invest, it's too late, right? And it is actually too late, but like especially for if you're competing against an institutional investor, right? It's definitely too late, right? Because they're savvier, they're larger, they're going to have more capital than you ever will. And yet I feel like that's the edge for someone like you guys, is helping build confidence. Obviously, nothing. This is just data, right? There's no guarantee here, but I think like that's just been like a missing gap in sort of the product available today. Is help me understand, right? Give me more signal to understand whether or not this idea that I have might actually pencil. It might be a little bit of a stretch still, but like give me a little bit more. And maybe 3 years ago this wasn't possible, but today, right, with AI, it certainly is, or at least way more possible than it has historically been. And I think you guys are uniquely positioned, given your data set, given your customer base, to kind of be that solution.
And Zach, like one of the things I'm very excited about is in 2 weeks we're launching a new product which allows you to exactly do what you're saying in terms of penciling. So like we have a heat map where you can sort by yield, and it's not like the entire country down to like a market, down to a submarket. And you can really get creative around like trying to like pick like 100 different metrics to like sort the map and have a geospatial experience of like trying to figure out what works. And then our like agents or underwriting agents will do the work that you're saying is like, okay, like, can you give me the demand intent? Can you give me the leading, like that's leading indicators, and then the lagging indicators are reviews, which is like, what are they saying after they've gone there? What's events, things like that. So there's a lot of interesting products that are coming out in the next couple of weeks that we're launching that will try and bridge the gap. We won't be the perfect product for the boutique investor, but we'll be the best we can be there.
I want to talk a little bit about just the tech space, the STR tech space more broadly, given your expertise in the industry in recent years, given your history at Uber, right? You were there as Uber was scaling dramatically in hyperscale mode. You have that context. You've got a bunch of friends who are at Airbnb, right, and or were at Airbnb during kind of a similar moment. What we've seen in the STR space in particular in recent years is there was lots of investment, lots of buzz, you talk about, I like to remind people that there were like the arbitrage bros in like 2020 and 2021 who've all sort of like gone away, right? There was Airbnb's entire search was positioned around these categories, right? This idea that you could live anywhere, that you could travel anywhere, that people were going to go and book this rural place in Vermont and stay there for a month, as opposed to booking a condo in the city, right? And that did happen for a period of time. You've seen those categories disappear, right? In large part from the core search experience of Airbnb, and that I still think that those stays are meaningful. They're the kind of places I like to stay, but they have better data on the mass consumer than I do. So it leads me to believe that their signal suggests that, hey, maybe the consumer has moved beyond these castles and grain silos and whatnot. But I really want to talk about sort of the investment we've seen in the STR space. You have institutional capital on the one hand, like really interested in the space, maybe for the first time. You've got these kind of these smaller acquisitions that have been made, these partnerships. You've seen sort of different PMS companies gobble up other PMS companies, right? So from where you sit, right, and your outside perspective, how do you view the technological landscape that touches the short-term rental space today? Where are the biggest opportunities, and where do you think are areas that are a bit more challenged today than maybe they were a few years ago?
No, I think overall, every single software company in this ecosystem, I'll flip. So unit economics is the biggest problem, Zach, in running any software company, let alone short-term rentals. And what I mean by unit economics is, on an average, of users paying $10 per listing in a year, $10 per listing per month, how much of a revenue you make per year. If on an average you have them for 2 years, what is the revenue divided by what is the cost to acquire it? Most customers are belly up. Most software companies are belly up here. They do not have a cost-effective way of acquiring a customer. So what does that mean? You can't buy your way into growth. You're struggling to grow. There's a lot of competitors. You spoke about PMSs. There's 100 PMSs competing for the same eyeballs. There is forget PMSs. Take data and analytics alone. There is AirDNA. Then there is 5 other copycats that have popped up in some way or format to try and solve some nuanced customer problem. Then there is revenue management companies also like having data that are solving that. So there's way too many software vendors, and there's only that much around the software spend to go around acquiring the customer. So You will see, just from a unit economics basis, there's not a lot of companies that will sustainably, profitably be able to grow here. So there will be consolidation, because if you get to the point where you're only growing 10, 15% and you're not profitable, you will want to find a solution where somebody else who has better capital or better distribution is better suited to sort of acquire you. So like, in terms of technology, I definitely see there's, from a unit economics and profitability basis, there has to be some level of consolidation. Otherwise, I don't know how that scales. Second, from a customer problem basis, like I keep coming back to first principles. Like if someone has infinite capital and they're able to like spend their way into oblivion to keep acquiring customers at a loss, they also have to solve real problems a customer has. At some point, if you're just like finding like a new way to solve what is not really a real problem, like you won't really differentiate yourself, and it's really hard. So like I feel like more than ever, there's going to be category consolidation. There is analytics, revenue management, benchmarking, all of that in one category. I call it the revenue stack. Like you're solving some sort of commercial intelligence problem. That's the space we play in. Then there is reservation management. That's the place PMSs play in. And then there is operation stack. So like you have all these companies that are solving some sort of an operation workflow. If a PMS was really good at it, they would do it, but there's a point solution for a reason. So like there's 2 or 3 functions that an operator needs to achieve via software. And there's going to be consolidation in that space. And it's going to happen in the next couple of years as the venture capital dollars dry up, as private equity dollars flow into the space. The industry is becoming a lot more mature. The scale is there. There's capital there. So that's at least my hot take. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but at least that's my worldview. That's exactly what we saw at Uber as well. At a certain point, we were willing to lose money in Russia with Yandex, with Didi in China, and at some point, you like divest your assets in that space that don't really grow at the same clip. You focus on your core markets and you just double down.
When one thing I've been thinking a lot about is this new era of vibe coding, right? So, and you're a true engineer, Rohit. So, you know way better than I do here. But I have just been in recent weeks. I've just become obsessed with Replit, and I've been one of those individuals who, and for our listeners, Replit, if you're not familiar, is a vibe coding tool. What is vibe coding? The ability, Rohit, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but from my take is the ability for peons like me to be able to like quickly build like web-based apps and or tools and products with simple prompts, quite frankly. So think about how you prompt ChatGPT to ask a question. Imagine prompting a service like Replit to build you an app, build you a solution. I feel like enterprise SaaS is just screwed. What I'm struggling to wrap my mind around, Rohit, is, and this relates to the PMS conversation that we were having just a minute ago, is if you talk to customers of the largest PMSs in the space, most of them are using like a handful of the product suite, right? Maybe it's 3, 4, 5 kind of core features, and then there's 1,000 other features that like are available that they were sold as kind of sexy add-ons, but they're not helping their day-to-day business. I don't know what the actual number is. Maybe it's more than 5. But point being, they're using a limited number of the PMS's tooling. What I've been able, as someone who's completely like non-technical, right? What I've been able to build for like my own purposes, right, in recent weeks, has truly like shocked me. I'm working on this project right now for this little feature and tool that I'm building. We're building at Journey. We have an engineer working on the project, and then I thought like, hey, could I vibe code my own version of it, and could it be at least like 90% of the way there, or whatever? He took 5 days to get the project done. Okay. I got it done in less than a day. And not only was it 90% of the way there, according to our CTO, it was 99% of the way there, right? And so this is one stupid small example, right? And again, I am no pro here, and this was a simple little like web app that I was building. But point being, I keep coming back. What keeps me up at night is like there's been so much money that's been invested in this space, right? Like if you're a guestie, if you're a hostway, if you're one of these like larger like PMSs who've been even if you're a legacy, right? One who's been here before Airbnb was even a thing. Like, how are you thinking about this moment, right? Because yes, of course, right? Your core property management customer is not going to spend a bunch of time vibe coding on Replit, right? But will an incumbent, or somebody new rather, come into the market, right, and be able to spin up a vibe coded tool and charge 10% of what you charge, and actually be able to like deliver 98% of the value or whatever it might be, right? Because they're really only focused on solving the 3 core challenges that customer has. Like, I have to believe, like, this is happening obviously in other industries. I have to believe this is coming soon. Like, you're an engineer, so I want your perspective on kind of this moment broadly, and like, how do you think it's shaping and or not shaping enterprise SaaS, specifically enterprise technology in the vacation rental market, where there've been, hundreds of millions of dollars invested, if not billions of dollars invested in recent years in tech in this space. How do you think about this moment?
Yeah, no, I'll give you my engineering hat, and I'll give you my business hat, and I'll give you both answers. So the engineering hat is when I think about my own version of like AI, it's like, okay, you have the infrastructure and the hardware layer. That's not where anybody's competing. Then you have, at least in the short-term rental ecosystem, there's no vibe coding your way into infrastructure and hardware. Then there is the language learning models and the actual data models. For that, you need true data expertise, true some sort of data mode to come up with a language learning model. Every single AI solution that is in the market right now is probably connecting their API to an existing commercial model in ChatGPT or something else, getting some insights and spitting out a vibe-coded solution. So it's not real language learning model training that's happening in this industry. At its core, I think AirDNA is doing that, but we are uniquely positioned because we have a data set, but that's just a competitive plug. Then number one is the application layer, Zach, which is what you're talking about, which is where most people can look at workflows that, at the end of the day, software is workflow. That is the fundamental. It's a decision tree of like, I want to do X, Y, Z. Can you design a UI for me to solve those problems in an easy-to-use workflow solution? That is what software is at its core. So the application layer is where you're starting to see a lot of like UI, UX innovation. And it does, so that's the engineering lens. Now, what I put in my business lens, it does one of two things. it makes the need to solve problems and generate the product velocity for any software company needs to be 10x that or what it used to be even like 6 months ago.
Yep.
If my enterprise customer comes to me and says, "Hey, I like the data, but I don't really like the way you present it. Can you come up with a dashboard for me to like digest and look at it this way?" I cannot tell him, "Please wait 6 months, so it's on my roadmap." That is not acceptable. I need to be able to have a customized UI for him to be able to see and digest the information he or she needs in a pretty quick way. Otherwise, you get sent into oblivion pretty quickly. So, like in terms of product velocity and speed, is key for any sort of like existing player. Now, the reason why I don't worry too much about someone vibe coding is like again, like from a business basis, not me personally, but any software company, they should think about the two things they have. Number one, do they have a distribution edge? Like if you speak about Guesty has phenomenal distribution in the PMS space. Like it's going to take somebody a lot to try and get to those many doors or those many integrations or that level of trust or that level of workflow integration to sort of upend that. Like you can take some share, but you're not going to take like distribution is a huge advantage. So you,
Yep.
as an investor, as an operator, as a customer, you need to look at what is the true distribution advantage a company has. And the second piece is if distribution is great, then it is about like the actual moat. Do they have unique integrations that, because if you're talking about PMSs, the most important thing for a PMS is system reliability. You
Yep.
cannot go down at any given point. So you need certain level of security standards, you need certain level of protocols. You can't vibe code your way into like a reservation management system. If it goes down or if it messes up the calendar, you're out millions of dollars. So like when system stability is a factor, there is a data mode, there is an integration mode, there is a workflow mode, there is a reliability mode that over time it reduces advantages. But yes, like there is that mode. So like if those two modes are there, then the third thing that happens from a business basis is cost. Zach, for me as a software provider, I can bang out 10x more products at the same cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gives me phenomenal advantage compared to any incumbent out there. Like you could vibe code it away, you could get some guidance, but the moment I see you launch it and I see you get some sort of like market share, I will code it within a weekend and because I have distribution advantages and workflow advantages and I'm embedded in your workflow, I'm going to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
So like that is what I'm trying to say is like there's going to be phenomenal competitors who come up with really interesting, unique problems that they're solving, which for any sort of software CEO, any sort of software product leader is a great time to dog food because I'm like, oh, well, if somebody has a better mousetrap on solving a real problem that is monetizable, great. Why don't you, Zach, go build the vibe code? Like go show me that there is demand. And if there's demand, if there's willingness to pay and people are using it, now, because of product velocity and shipping velocity, I could solve that problem way quicker. And then I can go back to, if I'm Guesty and I'm like, hey, you're already a Guesty customer. I have this add-on. He's charging 10% less. I'll give it to you for free.
Yeah.
Like, get after it. So like that is the structural advantage platforms of distribution will have if they can run fast and innovate at the speed at which AI is helping facilitate. So like for me, the biggest advantages for this AI wave is cost advantages and distribution advantages just quadruple my ability to win competitively and continue to solve key problems for the customers.
What I think your guys' like real moat is, and this is why I think data companies, right, they've become infinitely more valuable in the last 2 years, simply because these LLMs are only as good as like the structured data, right, that they have access to. I don't think that your guys' software, right, in and of itself is like the moat. It's the data that you have, right?
Yes.
Which is super interesting. Now, I think I agree mostly with what you said, with one caveat that I think about, when Google launched Gemini and how it was a disaster, and they took like way too long to launch Gemini, and they launched crappy like V1 of the product. ChatGPT was able to amass major consumer market share coming from literally like nowhere, right, to the general consumer. Anyways, OpenAI was not a household name by any stretch of the imagination. Gemini's come back, right? It's more useful today. It still doesn't have the market share of from a consumer perspective, right? That ChatGPT has, and I think like a core challenge, maybe even less so now that ChatGPT is like maybe the legacy model now, as you've seen other LLMs emerge in the last couple of years, right? Is just that it takes a long time for legacy businesses historically, and not every business is a Google. Very few are. right?
And Zach, which is why I said the key thing is Google had the distribution. If they were really aggressive with product velocity, like ChatGPT wouldn't have had the time of the day. But again, given the distribution advantages, like Gemini is doing pretty well.
It is doing
It's
well.
doing
It is doing
phenomenally
well,
well.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is doing well, and I
yeah.
think like Google, right, to give them credit, like they freaking like decided,
They-
hey, let's work not sunset, but like let's find a different way to think about our monetization strategy, right?
yeah,
And they changed search, and they that must have been incredibly like challenging, right, for
yeah.
many legacy investors, many board members, right? But they finally made that decision, and they did, and that was the right one. But it took them a while to get there, right? It took
It
them. I
does.
mean, it took them like well over a year, right, to make a meaningful decision there. And so now, jury's certainly still out on who the biggest winners will be in this space, but it's way too early for any of us to know. But my point, right, is that I see like the legacy folks in the SDR space, whether you're a guestie, whether you're Streamline, right, who's been around for forever, like you better figure out how to ensure that your
Move
data
fast.
like is a moat, and how to move really, really, really fast. Because every other day I get sent from people all the time like, hey, have you heard of this tool? Have you heard of this tool? The number of tools that I am being sent on a daily basis asking my opinion on, by the way, I've like haven't heard of 90% of them, right? I'm like, no, I haven't. What is this thing, right? But like, for an industry that is historically a little bit more legacy and slower to adopt, right? Maybe it takes another year or 2 years before
But
any meaningful change has to happen. But eventually that change is going to have to happen, right?
but
Otherwise,
Zach,
consumers are going to make, yeah.
why it's also very exciting is for the customer, this is great. Like the
Oh, it
more the
is.
competition, more pricing power they have. Like it's everyone's going one way. It's to the bottom. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of software companies will have pricing power. So to your point, the two things that matter more than ever in short-term rentals: do you have the distribution, and do you have some sort of moat? Hopefully, data
Yeah.
moat. Hopefully, workflow integration moat. Something that allows you to like innovate faster than anybody else and continue to maintain that pricing power, willingness to sort of like meet that willingness to pay appetite.
Oh, we could talk all day about all this stuff, Rohit. We have a few minutes left. So I want to ask you just a couple quick questions as we close out here. One, what's something that you now believe about this industry or this space that maybe you didn't believe when you first took the helm at AirDNA a couple years ago?
Yeah, it's I don't want to give a tongue in cheek answer, but the people like going to the like being in software, not really like just looking at the data, looking at the UI, looking at being an engineer, like, and sometimes you can disassociate yourself from the actual people doing the job. But like going to the conferences, meeting the innovators in this space, whether they're competitors, whether they are people in tangential spaces, I have massive admiration for everybody looking to short-term rentals. Hospitality is a really hard problem. Similar to Uber, there's technology and there's the human layer of actually solving the guest problems and guest needs. So looking at the leadership and the people working on solving these problems and how effectively they're using technology to solve this, as well as like their own human emotional judgment, has been like huge. Like I underestimated the level of talent in short-term rentals. I underestimated the like how smart people were, how competitive the ecosystem is, the amount of capital there is, the amount of professionalization that's happening. While all of this is happening, there is a human touch in the conferences, man. Like everyone knows each other's names. They're nice to each other. Everyone's like, I joke around saying the industry was built off people reading the Tim Ferriss 4 Hour Work Week and wanting to like buy a second or third home and like want a vacation where a lot of these folks in this industry are in this industry because they value that experience of life, like lustful living, like seeing the outdoor, seeing what's out there, experiencing the unknown. And like you see that flow through even in the competitive landscape. And it's not like dog eat dog, cutthroat sort of like classic software. This is like, it is a very, very like, it's a sweet industry.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That was a great answer. Okay, another quick, fast answer here, or question for you, hopefully facilitated by a fast answer. Will you guys graduate into independent hotels, boutique hotels for investors that want to go from vacation rentals to buying a roadside inn, redoing it on Instagram, renting it out? Will you seek to solve data challenges, market recommendations for that customer?
Not in the short term, not in the next
Not in
6
the short
months.
term. Okay. All right, final question for you, Rohit, is AirDNA, the name, the brand, going to change, going to stay around? Verbo's gaining some more market share. You've got, Expedia more generally, right, fighting back. They've got some fun ad campaigns that they're launching in the next couple of months that I think will really tell the story a little bit better. But thoughts on just decoupling a little bit from Airbnb as part of the name? Is that something that you guys have thought about and or considered?
We debate that a lot internally, if not for some of the SEO, AEO juice that you spoke about. We often discuss it. So it's 100% like something we discuss, but nothing in the short term.
Awesome. Well, I'm a super fan, obviously, of the product of your guys' team. You have an exceptional team. What you guys are doing, I appreciate how innovative you all are, and I think a lot about how in this new era that we're all living through, folks with data moats are the folks to watch because they have the upper hand right now. And there's a lot of pressure. You got to deliver on it, right? It might not be a moat for forever, but right now it is. So I props to you, props to the team for all the great work that you're doing. Thanks for coming on the show, man. For all those who are listening, I'll have Rohit's social handles in the show notes below. If you want to learn a little bit more about AirDNA, if you're not familiar with them already, in case you're, living under a rock or something, I'll have links to the AirDNA website in the show notes below as well. Rohit, man, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you for all you do for the hospitality space.
Hey friends, thanks for joining us for this episode of Behind the Stays. I'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at Behind the Stays or send me an email at zach@journey.com. If this is your first time tuning in, it's a pleasure to have you and we hope to have you back again soon. But if you've been a listener for a while, I'd greatly appreciate if you'd subscribe to the show if you aren't already, and then leave us a rating and review of the show wherever you're streaming this podcast. Oh, and if you know a hotelier or a hospitality entrepreneur that's building something new and novel, I invite you to introduce them to me so that my team and I can discuss bringing them on the show. Again, you can just shoot me an email at zach@journey.com or a DM on Instagram. Behind the Scenes is brought to you by Journey, a next-generation loyalty program built for the modern traveler. We're looking to onboard new boutique hotels, unique stays, and the top vacation rental management companies onto our platform every day. If you're a hospitality entrepreneur who has a stay or a collection of stays with soul, we'd love for you to apply to join our alliance at journey.com/alliance. Again, that's journey.com/alliance. Thanks for being here, y'all. We will see you next time.